All right, what's up, Restora Funding community? Thanks for showing up. Today's live stream is going to be all about high limit personal credit cards. All right, so we want to talk about why you want high limit personal credit cards, how to get them, what are some of the best high limit personal cards, and ultimately how this affects the business funding process. Because if you're in this community, you're probably a real estate investor, a real estate business owner, and your goal is to get as much 0% interest real estate business credit as possible. Okay. And that has a lot to do with your personal credit report. So we're going to start here. Why do you want high limit personal credit cards? Well, there's really three main reasons. And the first couple are going to be about just having a stronger personal credit report overall. So the first one is going to be lowering your utilization. Okay. Now, if you have high balances on personal credit cards and the banks pull your credit when you're applying for business credit and they see that, it's a red flag. It suggests perhaps you're in some sort of financial turmoil, right? And maybe you're asking for more money because you can't pay your bills on time or because you're underwater financially. And so when the banks pull your credit and they see that your utilization is like 50% or 80%, that can be a red flag. And by having higher limit personal cards, you counteract that. So to give you an example, $300 balance on an $1,000 credit card, that's 30% utilization right there. And if you were to have a $5,000 credit card instead, that $300 balance is going to be a lot different in proportion, right? So it shows that you have the credit available, but you're not exhausting it too much. And so you want to have higher limit personal cards because that's going to lower your relative utilization. So don't try to get the credit limits or anything like that on the personal side when you owe balances. That's not going to work in your favor. The banks want to lend when you don't need it. So what you want to do instead is get those high limits on the personal side when you're not using all your personal cards. And that way they actually get you approved so that when you start using them, then you're keeping your utilization down. Okay, so that's the first reason. The second reason is going to be pretty typical, just leveraging cards to improve your lifestyle, right? And so having more credit available on the personal side, it's going to let you spend more on your cards. It's going to let you get more rewards points. If you're part of like the Chase or the Amex ecosystem, they have really good rewards points, and more expenditure means more points, right? More travel you get to do with yourself and your family. So having more credit is good for that practical reason. Now, the third and final reason, and this is how it affects you on the business side, is a very important concept that we call comparable credit. Okay. So in short, this means that the banks want to see that you can wield a high amount of debt positively on your personal credit before they give you a high amount of debt on the business side. Now, let's say you have like a $10,000 personal credit card and you've had that for 5 years and you've used it very well. You've never made any late payments. Maybe you've ran it up on the balances a few times, but it was always paid down. And so, yeah, overall, you've done a really good job managing your personal credit card. Well, the bank will see, okay, this person has a $10,000 personal card. Maybe we'll trust them with like a $20,000 or a $30,000 business card. So these are things that you want to be conscious of. This is what we call comparable credit, or sometimes it'll be called mirroring, where the banks will actually mirror what other banks have given you, right? So sometimes, like at US Bank, you can get high limits if you have high limits with other banks and they see that, and you can actually provide like bank statements and prove that, right? This is like business to business I'm talking. So we want to use this mirroring technique or comparable credit on the personal side because all the banks that pull your credit report will always see your personal credit cards, and this can reflect really positively on the business side. Now, as a real estate investor, you're obviously going to be in a very capital intensive industry. And so you don't want these like skimpy 10 or 12K business credit cards, right? Especially not at major banks where you could be getting a lot higher limits. You want these big like 30, 40, 50, maybe even $70,000 lines of credit or credit cards. And the only way you're going to get that is if you have high balances, or I'm sorry, high limits on the personal side, right? Comparable credit is the key to getting large business credit limits. Now, those are some of the reasons why you want it. Now, let's talk a little bit here about how to actually get the high personal or the high personal credit limits. So, the first way to get high personal credit limits is going to be through credit limit increases. Now, for those of you who attended last week's live stream, you would have known that I taught you all about how to get high personal credit cards through credit limit increases. This is often called a CLI. Okay. So most banks right now are doing soft pull credit limit increases. But just to recap a little bit of what I covered last week, make sure you call the number on the back of the card, ask them if they're going to do a hard inquiry or not. Try to avoid that if possible. Most banks are doing soft. And you want to have a story, right? You want to give them a reason to give you the credit limit increase. You need to increase expenditure on your credit card, but why? And why do you want to do it on that card with that bank, right? Give them a reason. So typically you can do this every 90 days, every 3 months or so. And some banks, it's going to be every 6 months. No harm in just calling the number on the back of your card and asking them. Put a note in your calendar. Make this routine, okay? Especially if you want to build strong personal credit and therefore strong business credit over time. So credit limit increases are by far the most effective way to get high limits on not only the personal side, but the business side as well. And honestly, it's incredibly underused by people all around that I talk to. So that's one way. Now, another way is going to be authorized users. Okay. So a lot of you might not have like really high personal credit cards already, but you can get access to them through an authorized user account. Now, an authorized user is basically another individual's credit card or line of credit that you are being extended on as a user, and you're authorized to technically spend on that card. However, in the credit realm, the purpose is not for you to spend on the card, but the purpose is so that credit card actually reports on your credit report for a limited time. So let's say you're an authorized user of someone else's $20,000 Chase Sapphire preferred credit card. Well, after maybe 2 to 4 weeks, when the next billing cycle hits, that credit card is going to report to your credit report. Now you're going to be on a $20,000 Chase card. Okay. So now when you go to apply for other personal cards or other business cards, they're going to see that you have this available credit. And it's basically like this credit card is, it's yours. It's just an authorized user account. It's not an individual account. Okay. So that's another great way to do it. You can get authorized users through friends, family members. You can always go to a company like Tradeline Supply, which is basically an online marketplace that sells authorized users. You might pay a few $100s for a few months of access, but it's well worth it when you're trying to increase your credit lines and increase your comparable credit when going for potentially $100,000 plus in 0% interest business credit. Okay. So authorized users is the second method of getting high limit personal credit cards. Now, the third is just going to be applying at the right banks. Okay. So some of my favorite banks are going to be Chase, American Express. You also want to target banks that are going to be giving you business credit, right? So if you have any banks that you do current banking with, or maybe you want to get business credit at that bank because it has a 0% interest product or it has really good rewards that you want to take advantage of, think about those banks. Those are some of the other reasons we like Chase and American Express. But other than that, they tend to be very generous with their credit limits. Okay. So it's not unlikely that we see Chase and Amex cards giving like a $10,000 limit. Bank of America has some good ones. Goldman Sachs has a few good ones. And I'll be getting back into that in a minute. But applying at generous banks that you want to do business with, that's going to be very important as well. Now, is there such a thing as too much personal credit? Okay. So my advice is this: you don't want to start increasing all of your personal credit cards if you already have a high amount of personal credit at your disposal. And the reason why is because there's a sweet spot with this. Now, I recommend having $60,000 to $80,000 in available personal credit limits in total. So that means if you have 4 credit cards and they're all $20,000 limits, I wouldn't advise going a lot higher than that. Okay. Oftentimes, when you're applying for business credit, the banks might come back and tell you that they don't want to lend to you because you already have too much personal credit at your exposure, at your disposal. And they might see that you're not using it, because if you're doing things right, you probably don't owe really high balances on those, and your utilization is probably sitting at a sweet spot of like 3 to 5%, like we talked about. But they might come back and tell you that they don't want to lend to you if you have too much personal credit. So now you can have over 80 or $100,000 in personal credit if your credit report is balanced out by loans, okay, personal loans, student loans, auto loans, mortgages are a big one. These kinds of lending products can diversify your credit report and show that you're not too top heavy with personal credit. Okay. So they want to see again that you're able to wield debt over a long period of time without basically ruining your balances or running those up and making positive payments. And they also want to showcase diversity. So that's really important on your credit report. Now, back to some personal credit cards with high limits. Okay. So let's talk about Amex. Amex has a lot of co-branded cards. Okay, the Amex Delta Gold, the Marriott Bonvoy, the Hilton Honors card. These are all cards that can be even entry level for a lot of people who are new to building credit, and they're notorious for giving massive credit card limits. Okay, so another good bank is going to be Chase. The Chase Freedom Unlimited is an incredible starter card, and the Chase Sapphire Preferred. Okay, the Preferred is great for rewards. The Freedom Unlimited also does 1.5x point redemption on every dollar spent. So these are really good rewards points. Amex and Chase are also really good banks to get business credit on, especially at 0% interest. And so I definitely recommend targeting them on the personal side first to build that relationship and build that comparable credit. And again, these banks both do soft pulls on the credit limit increases. Okay. Now with Chase, you want to work up the hierarchy. So that means you don't just want to go for their highest tier card. If you were on my live stream about the Chase ecosystem and using that for tax write-offs and point maximization, you saw I talked a lot about the Chase Sapphire Reserve, which is my personal favorite travel card just due to its ease of use. Well, the Sapphire Reserve also has a minimum credit limit that they provide of $10,000. Okay, now this is key. If you can get under your belt a single personal credit card with at least a $10,000 credit limit, this makes your comparable credit look really, really good. Now, if you want like a 50K business credit card, you don't need a 20K, you don't need a 30K personal credit card. $10,000 is enough on a single credit card or line of credit. Okay, so that would be great if you can get the Sapphire Reserve. However, I recommend working your way up to that by first getting either the Preferred or the Freedom Unlimited. And American Express, outside of the co-branded cards, there's also a hierarchy. Don't just go straight for the Amex Platinum, right? Work your way up to that within the Amex or the Chase ecosystem. Okay, a few other personal credit cards I recommend that I just didn't want to let this video end without not mentioning is going to be the Goldman Sachs Apple credit card. We've seen that give really high limits. The Bank of America Cash Rewards card. That's a really good one in Bank of America. It's also very important to have some sort of previous relationship with them before moving on to the business side of things. And you can't go wrong with any of those cards, especially not with those banks. Okay. Now, a few banks that I recommend not getting personal credit at, if possible. And if you already have personal credit at these banks, that's okay. There's no need to like close your cards down or anything. Please don't do that. I just wouldn't recommend furthering your relationship with them if you're looking for business credit are going to be Capital One and Discover. Okay. And the reason for that is because Capital One and Discover both will take your business credit cards and report those onto your personal credit. Okay, so what that means is that if you're using business credit cards for real estate or other investments, that utilization, if you max that card out, it's going to damage your credit report. Okay, so that's not a good thing. You don't want business credit at these banks because you can't actually make aggressive or long-term investments with these business credit cards. Okay, so just to recap here, you want personal credit, you want high personal credit limits because it's going to help your comparable credit. It's going to lower your utilization. It's overall just going to make you a much better candidate with high business credit limits. You can get high personal credit limits through credit line increases, through authorized users, and through applying intelligently at the right banks and for the right credit cards. Overall, you want around 60 to 80,000 in total personal credit limits. Now, if you're not near that, by the way, that's totally okay. You could have like 20K, you could have 40K. We just see 60 to 80K be like a really sweet spot, but we've also helped people get 50 to 150K with a lot less than that. And in some cases with a lot more than that in personal credit limits as well. So don't sweat it. I'm just giving you the data here. And Yeah, take this video and run with this information. Start looking at your credit report and determining, do you need to increase your personal credit card limits? Maybe do you need to decrease them and go from there? Okay. Now, as always, thanks for showing up today. And if anyone watching this is interested in done for you business funding services, maybe you look at your credit report and you say, hey, my personal credit cards are looking really great and I'm ready to go with the business side of things. Go ahead and just comment the word funding below this video, and I'll go ahead and reach out to you. Sophia and I will see what we can do about putting together a tailored funding roadmap and knocking out that 50 to 150K in 0% interest business credit for you in the next 30 days. All right. So that's all I got for today. Have a good one and see you next week. Bye.